Yes, hey y'all, we're at AmFest 2025. Welcome to Crosspolitic Studios on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby, Toby Knox, I'm the Water Boy. And we got our one of our best friends we've ever had on the show. We go way back.
Our best.
We go back, our best. Nick Freitas. Thank you so much for coming on, Nick. Yeah. Hey, make sure we got yellow mic on. We got to turn it on. Toby will turn it on.
There it is.
There we go. So we had Dr. Ryan Cole on earlier. My voice has been going out, and Dr. Ryan, after the show, he's like, hey, man, I got some Ivermectin for you. So I'm actually going to take this live on YouTube right now because every time we brought up Ivermectin on YouTube, we've been canceled or deleted or whatever. So we're going to test it. This is kind of a Trump's now elected test on YouTube. So,
I love it. Let's do it.
While I'm taking it,
let's all do it.
I got to take it.
Oh my goodness!
I would love to hear a little bit about like your journey. I would love to hear about kind of how you became a Christian, how you got involved in politics, that kind of thing. I'd love for you to start there.
Sure. Well, I was raised in a Christian home, but my parents got divorced when I was pretty young. So my dad lived in Los Angeles, was LAPD, and then my mom lived in Northern California. So I would do the school years with mom, summers with dad. The one thing I'd say is, people will hear them like, oh my gosh, a broken home. Like, yeah, that part sucked. But it was great that I had both a mom and a dad who loved me. Both were Christians. And so they still raised me with those values. And they still, like, they didn't play the kids off of, the parents off of one another and things like that. So, again, I was very blessed to have the mom and dad that I did. So, again, being a Christian was always just kind of like part of the thing. It was like, of course I'm a Christian. And then I met my wife in high school. And again, whenever everybody sees my wife and then sees me, they're like, that doesn't make sense. They're like, oh yeah.
How does she get you?
That's what they wonder. She's super hot. So my wife's super hot.
I'm like a 5 and she's like a 9.
But here's the way you do it, right? Like to all the guys out there. I went to a small Christian school with a graduating class of 27.
Yep.
So can I compete with the world at large for my wife? No, but can I compete in a class of 27?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that. Dude, that's what you got to do.
I was the top 27 in my high school class.
You got to narrow your odds, dude. That's what this comes down to. So I tricked her into marrying me. She saw some potential that I tricked her into believing was there. And we got married in 19 and 20. Yeah. And then I was in the Army. So I was in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Okay.
So that's how it kind of, but we got married, wonderful wife, started having kids. When I started to take my faith seriously, in the way that I can say, like, now I started to live like if somebody saw me, they would know I was a Christian.
Yeah, right.
Was when my daughter was like 2 or 3.
Okay.
And it was because I'll never forget sitting there one day and my wife and I talking about how, we really need to make church a part of our life again.
Right.
And my daughter asked, what's church?
Oh, come on, Daddy.
I'm like, all right, well, I suck. I'm clearly a bad father.
My bad.
Yeah.
I remember we were driving in the car one time, and my youngest son, Zeke, was probably like, 6 or 7, and we were talking about Narnia.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Aslan. And my son, who's like 6 or 7, pipes up from the back seat, who's Aslan?
Oh, man.
That just shows. My daughter's here is asking, like, what is church? Yours is like, what's abolition of man by C.S. Lewis? Because we had only gone through the Chronicles so far. Like, shut up.
That's how
he was trying to relate, man. He was trying to relate.
Yeah.
That's how it is living in Moscow, bro.
My 7-year-old hadn't even figured out what his eschatology was.
But it was totally fair.
Yeah, totally fair. It was a combination of that and honestly, being by that time I was in Special Forces. I had I'd gone to combat, and honestly, I thought a lot of the Christian men I knew I was just not impressed with. The ones that led with "I'm a Christian," it was almost like I was supposed to like them because they were a Christian, not because they were a strong man, not because they were a good soldier, not because they could make good movies. Like I was supposed to love them because they were a Christian. And then I had a neighbor, Anthony Brown, who was also a soldier and just a strong guy. And when he invited me to church, it wasn't like, hey, man, you need to get back into church. And it was, hey, brother, love you to death, man. Like, we go to this church. Anytime you want to come, we're happy to have you. That was it. And I had a team leader named Ryan Nienaber, Green Beret captain. And again, wasn't on me all the time. It was just lived his life like a Christian man. But I could trust that dude in a firefight. And so as I started coming into contact with these men who were wonderful representatives of what it meant to be a strong Christian man, that's where it really started to become evident what was missing. Because I claimed Christ and I would, defend Christianity, but it wasn't really taking hold the way it should have.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is it was another Green Beret, good guy, bold, unapologetic Christian. And he's like, Nick, you need to start studying Christian apologetics. And that was the other part that I realized was missing. Because I had grown up in churches that were very charismatic. So it was almost like Jesus was an emotion. And so when you were feeling good, your walk with Christ must be strong. And if you were feeling bad, it wasn't. And all of a sudden diving into this idea of understanding my faith and defending it and coming up with the logical component. And what I realized is there's a reason why God tells you to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your mind, with all of your spirit, with all of your strength, because that's what a relationship is. And what I had this idea that like Christianity was an emotional feeling. It's not an emotional feeling, and it's not an intellectual conviction. It's a relationship. And when you mix all those components and it becomes a part of your daily life, that's what relationship is. And it was just amazing how that impact had a change with respect to marriage, with respect to fatherhood, with respect to everything else.
That's right.
So
That's right.
That was my journey from there to now.
I know you're doing you do a podcast now. When did that start?
Wait. The politics first, then podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Politics first, then podcast.
So I get done with my second tour in Iraq, and we actually had a really successful tour. We took out some really high value targets. Who were the targets?
Wow, Gabe. He can tell you, but he have to kill you.
I wouldn't have to. I'd do it for free.
He'd do it for fun.
I do it for love of the game, man.
Yeah. See, I figured that.
We had some. Again, I don't know how many of their friends are still alive, but we had some targets that we took out that were pretty good. But we got kicked out of battle space for it. We had a conventional commander that was mad that we had gotten his number one target without his guys being with us because we were special forces. He was a conventional unit. And again, we weren't trying to be disrespectful. The mission just happened the way it did, right?
Okay.
I didn't tell Homeboy to start throwing grenades. Homeboy started throwing grenades, so we killed him. But the bottom line is, right, it's not like we organized it. But we got kicked out of battle space. And I remember thinking to myself, my kids are missing a lot of time with dad. And they're willing to do that. My wife is willing to do that because she believes in the mission and what we're trying to do, and we're trying to keep America safe. But if you're not going to let me do my job, you don't get to take that much of my time.
Yeah.
Right? There's the trade-off. They will accept dad being gone when dad is able to do his mission. Right. And so Tina and I prayed about it. And we're like, you know what? I think I'm done. And I remember my sergeant major, Jerry, great guy. He comes up and he's like, what are you doing getting out after 11 years? And I said, I went over there, we did our job, and now we don't get to anymore. And I said, it's only going to get worse with the Obama administration. Yeah. And he goes, Nick, that's crap. You don't complain. You gain rank and then you fix the problem. I'm like, cool plan, Jerry. You're a sergeant major. How many problems you've been able to fix? Yeah. And after he got done calling me some things, he said, that's actually a pretty good point. I said, Sergeant Major, the problem is not guys in uniform. The problem is guys in suits. And so I said, I'm going to see if I can impact policy through the political realm. And I didn't think run for office. I thought I'd work on policy somehow. And so I got involved, started helping out candidates that I believed in.
Where are you living right now?
Virginia.
Okay.
Virginia. And then I got asked if I would run for the state house. And the first time I got asked, I said no, because I was making better decisions at that point in my life. But the second time I agreed to run, and I've been in the state legislature for 10 years. This will actually be my last year. I didn't seek re-election because, again, we felt God was calling us to do something else. But it was an incredible experience.
Quit special forces, and then now you're quitting politics.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that mean you are?
Makes me a quitter.
Gabe, you want to get killed, don't you? Yeah. You want to be forgotten.
I'm in a public spot right now. I feel pretty safe right now.
Right now. You won't feel that way when you close your eyes.
Yeah, did you like that Ivermectin you took? Did it come in a package that was labeled?
So what did you do? What kind of policies were you able to create during that time that would have helped you in the battlefield?
Not many, because I was in the state level, right?
Yeah.
Like I ran for Congress one time, and that was kind of that's an interesting story in and of itself. But some of the things I was trying to work on over there, the Defend the Guard Act. So one of the things I believe is, we shouldn't be getting involved in these full-scale wars without a congressional declaration of war. Right. That doesn't mean we can't do surgical strikes. That doesn't mean we can't do anything. But full-blown war, hey, Congress, how about you display an ounce of the courage you expect out of our men and women in uniform and actually vote for the war? Man. How about you do that?
Amen.
Yeah. Right? And but the Defend the Guard Act essentially said that, look, if there is not a declared war, then you can't deploy our National Guard overseas to combat environments. And I feel like that makes sense.
That's happened?
All the time.
Are you our National Guard?
We just lost 2 people from the Iowa National Guard in Syria.
They did that with Iraq.
Did you know the
though.
Iowa National Guard was in Syria? Nobody knows the Iowa National Guard was in Syria.
But
I
Right?
didn't see that.
So guys were getting killed.
I didn't believe the reporting. I was like, Iowa National. I didn't think. I had no category for that.
Yeah.
Is it true that in Iraq, our National Guard went to Iraq as well, right?
Oh yeah.
that's what-
Iraq, Afghanistan, the Guard, the National Guard's been everywhere. And again, it's not that I don't think they make a very, very valuable contribution, but my question is that if the National Guard is first and foremost supposed to be about defending the homeland, right? Then why are we sending them overseas to combat operations without a constitutional declaration of war? So I carried legislation like that, and I actually got good bipartisan support. But the powers that be would always come in and kill it, in part because a Democrat-controlled Senate did not really look favorably upon Nick Freitas legislation. But.
So I think I first saw you when you were a legislator. And you started doing some videos or something. You started making people mad, and you started. You started kind of sticking out as a Republican in Virginia. Yeah. How was that? Soon after you got elected, or did it take a couple years for you to get your footing? Or
2016 was my first session. The first time that I had a video kind of go viral was my first session. It was talking about a man named Sergeant First Class Charles Martland. He'd been First Special Forces Group. They were kicking him out of the military because in like 2 years before, in a tour in Afghanistan, he had beaten the living crap out of a child rapist, which I thought was something that should probably get him promoted. But they were kicking him out because they felt it was a violation of policy. The more you learned about the story, the more infuriated you got, not just with the situation itself, but what our military was doing to Martland. Because this had been the second time something like that had happened. And the first time that it had happened, they had sent it up. They had followed all the procedures, went up the U.S. chain, came down the Afghan chain. And the person that in that instance had like brutally assaulted a young teenage girl got something like 24 hours in prison. And then she was forced to marry him. Oh. So the second time that it happened, it was a 7-year-old boy. So Sergeant First Class Martland is commanding officer. They bring over the Afghan police officer that was accused of doing this. Afghan police officer admitted to it, but it was like, this is not your concern. This is not your concern. So Martland proceeded to show him that it was his concern.
Right.
And in part, this is because if you understand about how Green Berets operate, we're typically not, depending on the situation, Green Berets are oftentimes forward located working with their indigenous forces. So 12 Green Berets, Iraqi scout platoon or Afghan police force or whatever it is. That's how we operate, by, through, and with the local population. If we cannot maintain a sense of trust with the local population, then we don't have their support to operate, which makes our job incredibly difficult and far more dangerous.
Right.
And so what Martland properly assessed this situation, he goes, if I don't do something right now, just from a moral standpoint, we also lose operational capability. But if I can demonstrate right now to all the people in that village that if somebody assaults them, Americans are going to do something about it.
Come on.
I build that kind of trust.
That's right.
And so I asked the question on the floor, what sort of military do you want to be defended by? Do you want to be defended by a military that when they see evil, they confront it? Because I'll tell you this, a lot of people don't understand this. I talked about this yesterday. You think you understand evil when you see it. You understand evil when it looks back. And the question is, what are you going to do in that moment? And what Martland did was punish the living hell out of it. God bless you, sir. That's what I want Americans to do. I think it says something about American service members that when a small boy in a foreign country that doesn't speak the same language, doesn't share the same cultural traditions, sees that American flag on that shoulder and thinks, that is someone I can go to for help.
That's justice.
That is what I want personified in the United States military, and we were about to kick it out.
Wow.
And there was such, and look, I wasn't the primary guy on this. Duncan Hunter and Congressman from San Diego at the time, he was doing a lot of work on this, a lot of other people. But people were furious that one of our Green Berets was going to get kicked out over this. And they caused such a fuss about it that he got to stay in. They rescinded kicking him out, and he got to serve out his time in the military. So that one, and then in 2018, I gave a gun speech that got about 100 million views because it was right after Parkland, and all the typical things were happening. We were being told that if we didn't support stricter gun control, we were being told that if we don't want to infringe on the rights of people who did nothing wrong, right, then all of a sudden we were bad guys, we were racist, we were sexist, we were bigots, we were terrorists, whatever. And I got tired of it. And I think the thing that really upset the other side of the aisle, because 3 Democrats left in tears and they requested a 15-minute recess. I gave a defense
no
of the
crime
Second
in politics.
Amendment. Yeah, I gave a defense of the Second Amendment, and I told him, I said, let me tell you what makes it hard to have like a reasonable conversation on this issue, is that every time we bring up why we think it's important for free people to be able to defend themselves and to defend a free state, you call us racist and sexist and bigots. I just want to remind you guys of something. It was not my party that supported slavery, that fought women's suffrage, that put people in concentration camps during World War II, that supported Jim Crow, that supported segregation or mass resistance. That was the Democrat Party. They did not like hearing that.
More crying.
They did not like hearing. Oh, literally, 3 people left the floor crying.
Unbelievable.
And I even said, I said, look, I realize that none of you supported those individual policies, but your party did. So stop projecting the sins of your party onto us. Because all we're trying to do is make sure that free people have the means and the ability to be able to defend themselves. And oh, by the way, if every time my right to do something is forfeit the moment somebody else abuses their right, well, then I don't have rights. I have temporary government privileges that you'll take away under any excuse.
That's right.
So that resonated with people, and that kind of blew up. But 2021 is when we really kind of doubled down on social media. COVID happened. Yeah. We needed to be able to communicate with people. I didn't trust the press to do it.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay. So, like, what did you learn? Like, I guess if I ran for legislator and I made it, I think after by 10 years I would leave because of how frustrating it would be to be a legislator.
No, if there's one thing I would ask people to understand about politics in a way that they can actually have a very positive impact on it. Running for office is difficult, right? And you're going to have people out there that are consistently really trying to do the right thing. Please support those guys, right? Just because the press says something bad about them, just because somebody on social media said something, if they've proven they can be trustworthy, they need your backing, because guess what? Everybody else hates them down there. Everybody else hates them. And then if the people that they're doing this for turn on them because, well, why did you do this? Well, ask them. Yeah. They probably got a pretty good reason. Right. Ask them, right? For the people that you can't trust, you just can't trust them. But if you wanted to fix like the Republican Party right now, here's what you would do. You would look at every single legislator, not in a swing district. If they're in an R+1 district where they barely keep their seat, they're going to take some votes you don't like. They're not going to be your champions for guns and abortion, right? Go look at all of the legislators that are sitting in R+20 seats. That means they win every single time. They win. Half the time, they don't even get challengers. Go look at those guys' voting records. If they're not standing up defending Second Amendment, if they're not standing up defending the unborn, if they're not standing up fighting against, the mutilation of gender-confused children, they're the problem. Yeah. That's where you move the Overton window. You move the Overton window by electing actual conservatives to conservative districts.
So good, yeah.
And instead, what we have in the majority of those seats is we either have weaklings or we have traitors. And the way you figure it out is you start looking at things like their ACU score, American Conservative Union. You start looking at their Club for Growth score, because those guys don't just take the top line votes that get to the floor, because here's what some of these legislators do. If they've got a bill they don't want to vote on, they'll make sure it dies in a subcommittee. So they've never taken a no vote. And then they'll get up and they'll talk about how much they want constitutional carry, or how much they support the Second Amendment, or how much they support pro-life, when behind the scenes they're killing the bills. But we have organizations that actually look at those committee votes. We have those other people that can actually provide that knowledge. And so one of the biggest ways you can look at it, even if you can't check their votes, look at the bills they carry. Are they carrying anything that's pro-2A? Anything that's trying to save the unborn? Are they carrying anything that's controversial? If they never carry controversial bills, chances are they're either never helpful on the stuff that matters, or they're actively working to kill it behind the scenes. And you can beat them in a primary.
Or you can push them. So, right? I mean, seriously.
You can,
if they know they're going to lose, and you know they can be manipulated, which obviously they can, now you can put pressure on them to force them to be conservative as well, because you know that they're cowards.
Yeah. It's the whole Reagan thing, right? If I can't make you see the light, I'll make you feel the heat.
Exactly.
Right? And the guys, and that's what I say, look for R+20 districts in your state legislature and your congressional representation. Then go look at the bills they carry.
That's good.
Go look at the votes they take. And if they're not carrying hard legislation and they're not taking any like real stands on anything, replace them, because they're cheaper to replace. And when you get somebody in there who's actually good, they can be there forever.
Nick, we're at AmFest. We're remembering Charlie Kirk. We're really grateful for his legacy. At the same time, there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of
Some cat fights.
Some cat fights. Some. What's your read on where we are as a conservative movement? There's been so much momentum in some really helpful ways. Some of that's some of the drag on Trump and running in that, which is super grateful for. At the same time, this is a big tent. There's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas. What are you seeing maybe here? What are you seeing more broadly, though, just in terms of the movement? What do you see is coming next?
A couple of things. So first of all, conservatives tend to be more individual in nature. That doesn't mean we don't believe in family or community,
right.
But we're not collectivists.
Right.
So this isn't about, okay, everyone get on board with the exact same message and let's go, right? We believe in truth. Now, I will say that I think the standard for truth I see being used in some of these debates, I'm a little bit skeptical of, right? I'm a Christian. God provides truth, right? So there has to be an objective standard of truth that we can both appeal to. And when contradictory statements are made, what the question should be is, okay, what's true and what's the standard we use for doing that? And it can't be innuendo. It has to be facts, evidence, and logic. So that's a standard that we have to hold everybody to, regardless of who that. Now, reasonable people can disagree on certain things. Right? That's perfectly fine. Reasonable people can disagree on degree. They can disagree on focus. I got no problem with that. We should have those discussions. The other thing, too, that I would just beg people to consider, and I have my feelings on some of the debates currently going on, and I've made those feelings known in certain capacities. You have this incredible opportunity where you have tens of thousands of students here, and you have an opportunity to talk to them. The thing I admired most about Charlie was two things, actually. One, Charlie always pointed higher than himself. Right? Charlie wasn't going around trying to say, look at Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was going around going, look at Christ. That provides an objective standard for all of us to appeal to and live our lives by. That is fundamental. Right? We can debate about tax policy all day. We can debate about foreign policy all day. That's fundamental. The other thing is, what are we fighting for? I hear a whole lot about what we're fighting against, and that's fine. It is proper to identify the things that you're fighting against. But I'm not dying for the things I'm fighting against. I'm fighting and dying and striving for the things that I'm fighting for.
Like Israel.
How about this? I'm fighting for godly men and women becoming godly husbands and wives, becoming godly fathers and mothers in order to raise a generation to do the same thing in the future. Now, if I have a nation comprised of that, chances are I don't have to worry a great deal about the politics. Right? So, yes, we can have a fight all day long about foreign policy. Great, that's good. Let's do that, okay? I wish to God that the fundamental battles going on in American politics right now were about if we should send a certain amount of money to a certain number of countries. But we've got millions of people being killed in the womb.
That's right.
We've got children that are being systematically indoctrinated to hate God, hate their country, overthrow what we have here,
and cut themselves up.
But no, we want to have these. We can have these fights.
Yeah.
But in this moment right now, with all of these people watching, can we please, for the love of God, focus on something worth dying for, worth living for?
Amen.
Charlie did that wonderfully. That's his legacy.
Amen.
And let's respect that legacy by using this opportunity to be able to give a whole bunch of young people who are looking for answers. Let's point them in the right direction. Let's point them to Christ. And let's point them to the things that they can actually have an impact on in their lives in order to create something worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Boom.
I mean, one of the... Yes.
That's right. Give it up.
Yeah. I was actually talking to someone earlier about this. If our nation was 99% Protestant when the Constitution was ratified in 87, 80, 89, that's 1787, 89. So logically, if we're 99% Protestant, then Christians lost this country over time by not raising faithful kids. And so we went from 99% Protestant to whatever, 40, 70 million Christians now and everything. And I feel like our government is constantly addressing Band-Aids or fixes or even the wrong things. I've appreciated a lot Pete Hegseth and what he's been doing in the military, and the chaplain thing's been fantastic. I'm like, and then he's talking about celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas, all this stuff. how do politicians get back to like emphasizing the faithfulness of family? I mean, I think undoing abortion is important and all this, but like, are there policies? Are there, the central issue is raising faithful kids to love Jesus and love America.
The problem is not that the government hasn't done enough to foster strong families. It's that the government has done too much in order to replace roles that used to belong to the family.
Amen.
That's right.
Right? They've replaced roles that used to belong to the church. My wife has said it best before when she goes, when you allow the government to do the things that the church, the individual, or the family were meant to do, now government is getting the glory and the power for things that it was never intended to wield. So now instead of God getting the glory for things that should be taking place, government's getting the glory. And so government is now even when we look at the question of family, it's like, well, what can the government do in order to get out of the way?
Yeah.
How about that?
That's right.
You can stop trying to be daddy for everybody. How about that? You can stop trying to provide in a world where men and women are supposed to provide in the bounds of matrimony. You can stop trying to educate my children for me because I don't need your help because you suck at it, right?
Yeah.
You can start giving the power back to individuals in order to do those things. But you know what? A lot of people don't want the power back.
Yeah,
we live in this world where we think everybody wants freedom when really what a lot of people want freedom from is responsibility.
That's right.
Oh, man.
And so I think what we need to understand is that when we talk about freedom, it's very, very important. Political freedom, I believe, is critically important. But the freedom to do what?
Yeah.
Right? I don't want the government providing me things that God told me I'm supposed to provide or the church is supposed to provide.
Yeah.
Right? I want us to respect the various duties and responsibilities within the provinces in God's created order.
Yeah.
And the thing I would say to the church is, look, we have an incredible opportunity right now. And once again, it's in large part due to Charlie Kirk. Young men are looking for meaning, purpose, and identity, and they're actually willing to give the church a try. The question is, what will they find when they go in there?
Yeah.
And if they find a feminized church that is not willing to stand boldly and unapologetically for the gospel, they're going to walk away and they're going to look for somebody else to show them how to be men. And there's a lot of other options out there that we don't want any of our young men following. But we can't just sit here and be like, well, don't follow them. Well, great, who should they follow? Because if you're not going to stand up and actually provide them a guide, you're not going to actually provide them discipleship and direction, well, then don't be shocked when they go to the first guy that has a nice car, a good-looking woman on his arm, and a lot of money. Because at least that guy's got something to offer.
Right. I mentioned this on the show earlier with another guest, but it's striking to me that at the founding of the country, during the congressional meetings, the Continental Congress, the single most cited book was the Bible. And in the Bible, the single most cited book of the Bible was Deuteronomy. Yeah. And then think about the founders of our country were all 20-something men. 20-something. Like the old guy was Ben Franklin, who was 33. And we're thinking, that's still pretty young, right? But it's like, but so they're like, we're going to start a new country. Let's study Deuteronomy.
And it's funny, how freaky would that be for a 25-year-old to start a country in our time? No!
We're having a Bible study.
Away from that button. It's not easy.
But the thing is, my point is that to your point, it's like, okay, all these young men who are saying our country's messed up, our leaders sold us out, we got screwed because of DEI and all the woke nonsense and a whole bunch of nonsense before that, and now they're starting to say, hey, Christians build our country. Maybe we should go back to the church. And what are we going to find there? Right. And the question is you're right. We need men who are going to preach the gospel boldly. But the question is are they going to hear messages that say, here's how to rebuild your nation? Let's open to the book of Deuteronomy. Like, open your Bible and see what it says so that you can actually know how to rebuild your family, rebuild your business, rebuild your community, rebuild your country.
I think one of the things we have encouraged adolescence and essentially childhood to extend way beyond what it should actually extend to.
Amen.
Childhood is not so much legally it is an age range. Let me make that very carefully. But it's also a question of maturity and responsibility. Right. And yeah, if you tell kids that you should still be on mom and dad's insurance forever, and they're going to take care of all of your plans. And I understand the financial incentives for doing so, but we've created this again where we're constantly extending childhood way beyond years. My grandpa at 16 was getting on a boat to go fight the Empire of Japan, and guess what? He didn't think it was something incredible. That was just something you did. Our country's at war. We need to go do it. I'm going to go do my part.
Yep.
And the thing is that I do think that's incredible, not just because he chose to do it, but because he didn't think it was incredible. I think Our youth will rise to the standard we set. And when we set it really, really low, don't expect them to rise beyond it, because that's the example we've given them. When we expect more of them, it's amazing how they actually rise to the occasion. But we've become so afraid of, like, well, what if they fail? Good. That's a part of life. Learning how to deal with failure is an important part of your intellectual and emotional maturity. And so what the church has to offer in this time, if we're willing to actually take the mandate that God has given us and the instructions that he's given us, is that, first of all, we need to understand something. God is so merciful that the most flawed attempt to faithfully execute his commands is blessed exponentially.
That's right.
Yes.
That's so true.
I look at the relationship that I have with my kids and the men and women they've become, and I look back on all the ways like I totally dropped the ball. But the one thing I can say is my wife were faithful in trying to raise them in the way that they should go. Screwed up entirely. In so many, I did, especially in so many ways. Was, man, I should have done this more. I should have been. Yeah. Why wasn't I praying with them more? Why wasn't I reading my Bible with them more? Why wasn't I providing more challenges for them? And yet, each one of my kids loves the Lord. Yeah. Their faith is their faith. It's not mom and dad's faith. Amen. And I look at this, it's like, man, that is a testament that just try. Just try to faithfully, and God will bless it in such a way to where it gives you the energy and the awareness and everything else to be able to continue to do it when it gets difficult.
So, Nick, we got a couple minutes left here with you. And I want to, maybe this is kind of our last question, but we started Crosspolitic Studios in 2016. We all grew up in the church. But one of the things we saw lacking was just discipleship and teaching the Bible on how to apply it to politics and culture, and how that had become so taboo. And then on top of that, this is, I'd say, the Republican Party is more responsible than the Democratic Party because they still claim Christ at some level, right? And so the Republican Party over time has developed this Christless conservatism. And so our goal, our prayer was to hope Crosspolitic would fill some of that void, teach Christians, embolden them, give them courage and all that stuff. And I would say the one thing I appreciate about Charlie Kirk was when I started following him, I don't know, 2013 or something. I can't remember, 14, something like that. Or at least I knew of him. And over time, he became more and more Christian in his approach with TPUSA. That was clear. And so my concern now for TPUSA faith, or TPUSA, not even faith, but TPUSA, is, are you going to revert to Christless conservatism, or are you going to continue to push the direction that Charlie was pushing in his walk with the Lord and how he's applying his faith into politics?
I can't see Erica letting that happen. Yeah. I can't see some of the closest people around Erica letting that happen. And I think you see it evidenced by the speakers that we've had at this event, by the emphasis on faith through the event. It became very, very popular, and I fell victim to it as well, this idea that I never believed that Christianity should completely be separate from politics, but I remember arguing for thinking, well, I want the government to leave me free so I can exercise my faith, but we should be careful about religious influence in politics, because if you accept one, you accept all, right? Like that was the theory that was pushed forward. Yeah. And here's the conclusion I came to. 10 years in the General Assembly, I have literally voted on thousands of pieces of legislation. For anyone that will tell you can't legislate morality, my response would be that after thousands of votes,
we do it every day.
Not one bill was not predicated on a moral premise.
That's right.
So whenever someone tells me you can't legislate morality, I say, well, that's funny because it's all we legislate.
That's right.
Yeah.
The speed limit is predicated upon a moral premise.
Yeah.
Jaywalking, predicated on a moral premise. Red light cameras, predicated on evil.
Right.
Amen.
So if it is a foregone conclusion that morality will inform legislation, the question is from whence is your source of morality?
Amen.
Oh, well, it's from secularism. Oh, the one thing that cannot give me an objective basis for morality.
And changes.
Yeah, I will see atheists. So you're saying me an atheist can't be moral? No, you can. You just can't explain it.
Right.
You can't explain it within your worldview, because objective morality requires an objective lawgiver.
Right.
right? It requires an external source that we can appeal to. Because if your source of morality is just the majority, well, I know of some cases where the majority did some pretty horrible things.
I do too.
Right? And what are you going to say? Was the majority wrong when they did it? Or is that your source of morality?
That's right.
So if all legislation is based off of a moral premise, and we want an objective morality in order to inform the legislation, well, then I want Christianity. Amen. Why? Because I believe it's true.
Right.
I believe it's the true one. Yeah. So that's what I want. So that's what I'm have to inform. Now, here's the other thing about Christianity. I am not permitted to use the sword to proselytize.
That's right.
I cannot force you to be a Christian.
That's right.
Not all religious slaves believe that, by the way. Right? Just ask Dearborn. Anyway. So what does this mean? It means my Christianity should influence, must influence. Anybody that tells you, well, I'm a Christian, but I leave my Christianity at the door when I go into the hall, they're lying to you about one of two things. They're either lying to you about their Christianity, their religion influencing their politics, or they're lying to you about what they really believe.
That's right.
Right? But it is a contradiction to say, I'm a Christian, but I leave it at home when I legislate.
That's right.
No, my Christianity is a comprehensive worldview. It is the fundamental source of truth. As C.S. Lewis said, I look at it like the sun, right? I don't just believe in it because I see it. I believe in it because through it, I see everything else.
That's right.
So it has to inform, and it has to be, our country was created predominantly by English Protestant settlers.
Right.
Right? And Deuteronomy, scripture informed it. And so I think we need to understand, as John Adams, who was, by the way, one of the least Christian even of the founders, said that our Constitution is written for a moral and religious people and is totally unsuited to the governance of any other.
Right.
I believe him.
And Christianity then is actually, because it's true, it's actually the best thing for the world.
Yes.
It's actually the kindest, most just system, even for unbelievers.
You know how you know? Because when Muslim refugees have to flee their country, they flee through 52 other Muslim countries to get to this one.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they know that we'll treat them as image bearers of God.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. It said this before too. It's like, our fight is not against flesh and blood. My faith commands me to love my enemies and pray for those who curse me.
Yes.
Now, it does not command me to sit by idly as debauchery and degeneracy takes over my civilization.
That's right.
But it does, my enemy is ultimately never the other image bearer. It's never the other person that is created in the image of God. Now, they may put themselves in a situation where we have to contend.
Right.
They may put themselves in a situation where I have to defend myself using violence.
Right.
Right? But ultimately, my goal, my hope for every single human being, no matter how much I may vehemently disagree with them or hate their actions, is that they would come to find the truth of Jesus Christ, accept him as their Savior.
Yes.
Forgiveness is a command. But if they want reconciliation, that requires repentance.
Knox, you get the last word because his staff keeps texting me.
Oh, I think he just said the last word. That was fantastic.
Okay, so then you can arm wrestle him. You can arm wrestle him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't arm wrestle guys that bench more than me.
I'm glad you think so. Thank you, brother. Appreciate
Thank you,
having
Nick,
me.
so much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.